Hi, you're listening to Engagement Drivers, presented by EveryoneSocial. Each week, we'll share actionable tips, strategies, and success stories that you and your teams can use to steer your brand, social, and employee engagement in the right direction.
Hey everybody, Todd here, Director of Marketing at EveryoneSocial, coming back once again with another great solo episode of Engagement Drivers. Currently recording this before the Christmas holiday and New Year. I'm not sure if this episode is going to come out before or after, but most likely after. So hope everyone has a great rest of the year. I know it's been another crazy time in the world. Hopefully a 2022 gets much better, but we're excited for the year as far as the business side and where things are going. Really excited just about the progress we've seen, but also just the cool things our customers are doing, and just that the atmosphere out there about the value of social media at work is just continuing to grow, and these companies are just seeing results. But one of the things we wanted to talk about with you today is LinkedIn posting tips, really to help you succeed in posting more content, getting engagement, but also building the attention you want on your personal brand in the right way. I think these tips really apply to anybody, right? They apply to those who are managing an employee advocacy program. Maybe use EveryoneSocial, for example, if you're listening to any of our customers out there, or looking just to better help employees understand what they should be doing, how they might want to format things to help teach others. It could be that you're interested in getting involved in your company's employee advocacy program, and you just are afraid or don't have the information that you think you need, but you want to get better at it. Or you're just an individual practitioner who's just manually posting things on social and getting involved, and maybe one day will be part of advocacy program somewhere, or doing your own thing. I think there's value in any sense, whether you fit into either bucket. But we're excited to talk about this because LinkedIn has just become a super powerful tool. I don't think there's any doubt, if you live in any kind of social media space at all, or just in tech or anything, you really kind of starting to understand the power that has and the influence it has as well. It's kind of amazing. How far LinkedIn has come in the early days. I remember 2010 graduating college and people telling me to create a LinkedIn account because it's a great way to find jobs and at least network with some recruiters, but nothing was really going on, right? It was just kind of like job postings, some ads. Occasionally somebody might post some content, but it wasn't like how it is today. And now you see there's almost 800 million members. There might be over 800 by this episode coming out, in over 200 countries. And it's not just about finding a job. It's a great place to still discover that, but you start connecting with great people. You build communities. You can find and research and discover products or services. You can learn from other people in your field that have amazing insights. It's really like an educational tool now. I've learned even more from marketing just by being on LinkedIn and following great marketing leaders. And it's a great place to build your own personal brand, thought leadership for just future career things. You could find jobs just by posting advising roles. Maybe you get invited to podcasts or webinars. It's kind of endless, which is kind of cool. But it also can be a little bit intimidating and overwhelming at first, especially if you're not used to social media or you just don't feel comfortable putting yourself out there. And that's what we wanted to do with this topic, was really try to help you as an individual figure out how to be more active and really reap the benefits of this great platform. So again, whether you are managing a program, like an advocacy program or social selling program, whether you're an individual just looking to grow, or your company has an advocacy or social selling tool and you want to get more involved with it, but you don't know how to necessarily do it, this will be for you. And really excited to dive into it, because we're trying to, of course, continue to educate not only our customers, but anybody, because we're just so passionate about this type of stuff. So let's dive right in. I think we'll have a good episode here. So one of the things before posting content and really diving in on LinkedIn, there's probably some things that you're going to start asking yourself, right? What kind of content should I share? How often should I post or engage on LinkedIn? Will people even care what I have to share or talk about? What opportunities or benefits are there for me to get involved? I think for most people, these are just very common thoughts that can maybe make you hesitant, right? The main thing to really keep in mind, though, is you should just start. One of the things I've learned is, back in the day, I was always afraid. I had ideas of things I wanted to do, and I was always hesitant. And when I got past that and started doing things, cool things came out of that, right? Um, I always wanted to start a blog, and this is back in 2010 too. And I started a music site because didn't know anything about building websites at the time, and figured it out. And it was really cool. Had some great opportunities to connect with so many great bands and musicians, some who became pretty big today early on, access to things. And the same thing when I started another side business, another website business in the personal finance space. I was always hesitant about making an LLC or treating it like a business. And when I just started and figured it out, it became something, and I was able to sell it and make money off of it, which is really cool. So, I think the mantra of just start is just super important. And I think the more you can get into that mindset, the better. It's not as scary as you think. A lot of times it's just our minds overthinking and overanalyzing. I'm very good at overanalyzing things to a fault at some points, but over time you'll learn what works best, and you can ease into things too. You don't have to go, from 0 to 100 immediately on day one. You can start to kind of start slow, figure out your process, and go from there. The other thing that I think most people need to start with too is also optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So if you don't have a LinkedIn account, of course, go sign up for one. But before you really post, consistently or take it more serious, it's a really good time to optimize it. You want to showcase like what you're about. What are your expertises that are in? What are your expertises in? What skills do you have? How do you want to be known? These are questions that, really help you get your LinkedIn profile in top shape. Because you have to think about too, is that these are people who will view your profile. You want to hit them with the right kind of information about who you are, why they should engage with you or follow you. You want to have a clean profile. Be smart with your profile headline. That's another great opportunity there. You can do a mix of things, right? Mine is simple. I have a director of marketing at EveryoneSocial, founder of Invested Wallet, putting that I sold it. Some people, I could change it to a phrase where it's like helping empower employees use social media at work, right? Explains what I do, my industry. But you can play around with that. Your about section should be your story. Tell a little bit about yourself. You don't have to have a super in-depth novel, but it's a good opportunity to kind of tell a little bit about what you do and where you've learned, what you know, and that kind of stuff. Definitely fill out your work experience. I mean, look, you don't need to make LinkedIn a super in-depth resume, but your past experience, again, is just good to have in there, especially if you're looking for future career opportunities or even professional endeavors where you're getting invited to conferences or webinars or podcasts or things like that. Definitely edit your profile URL. It's funny when I still see people not do that, like brand it as your name. And there's other things you can do too. There's kind of more in-depth things like on mobile, you can actually do a name pronunciation. If your name is more challenging, definitely take advantage of that. But if your name is pretty easy, one of the really cool things that I've seen people do is actually make like a brand statement through that, or just talk about what they do, or a little personalization. Just make it fun, make it interesting. But definitely optimize your profile before you really dive into posting consistently. And then kind of part 3, before we get into these posting tips here, is really know your content topics and interests, right? Once you kind of get your profile in top shape, it's time to think about what your strategy is going to be. And it doesn't need to be super complicated. Employee advocacy programs, can really help facilitate that and make it easier, especially for people who don't know what to post. But if you're leading a program, you for sure want to have different resources of content, right? Include third-party content of different industries, fields within your company. So like, marketing people want like probably marketing topics, right? Sales people want sales topics, but then also include your company content, your blog content. Let employees create their own kind of interesting variations too. That'll help, I think, alleviate a lot of fear that some just don't even know where to start a strategy. But a good way to look at it, even if you are a individual user of employee advocacy, or you're creating content just to post manually, think about what really intrigues you or what you find interesting and what type of people you want to connect with, right? So for me, I narrowed it down to basically 4. Mine are marketing learnings, experience, and thoughts. So since marketing is my career path, I like to talk about marketing stuff, things I'm learning in the industry, tips for other marketers, that kind of stuff. I also like to talk about side hustles and business interests. So I've always been a big believer in working on side projects in tangent with your full-time work as long as there's no overlap and it doesn't hinder what you're doing professionally. But I've learned a lot from side hustles, and not only is it a great additional income stream, but how it applies to marketing or business sense or entrepreneurship, things like that. So that's another topic I'm passionate about. Employee advocacy and social media naturally, because they are my interest. They do tie to marketing, but it's also the industry I'm in. So definitely want to pull in the industry I'm involved with. And then everyone's social, because I work for the company. So things like hiring, news, culture, blog content about my company, that kind of stuff. So those are my main areas that I like to talk about, and the types of content that I'm looking to share, and the content plan I want to engage with others that are sharing that kind of similar stuff. So I have that defined, and I'm ready to go now because those are the things I want. So I think if you're an admin of an employee advocacy program, it'd be good to kind of take a survey and understand of what your employees that are going to be involved in this program are interested. If it's all marketing and sales folks, then focus on marketing and sales type of content along with maybe their personal interest. They also can create their own groups of content that pulls RSS feeds or Twitter handles or anything that is interesting to them that they might want to share. Naturally, your product, your company, your hiring, those are all important things too. But mixing all this stuff in is going to be good for a couple of reasons. One, employees will be more engaged. If you're an individual user, naturally, you'll be more engaged if it's more content than just about your company. That type of content still impacts the brand. You might not think it does because you're not seeing like, oh, we're not getting direct clicks to our blog posts all the time. No, but your profile images, your header images, your profile header of like where you work, that kind of tagline, people click the profile of the person, see where they're working, they're clicking, and then extrapolate that across, 50, 100, thousands of employees over numerous pieces of content every week. Huge brand awareness, huge brand impressions. And it's pretty funny too, actually. I just recently I follow Nick Bennett on LinkedIn, definitely give him a follow. He's been doing some really cool things, personal branding wise. And one of the examples he shared was like, hey, he doesn't talk about the company he works for that often. He does occasionally, talks a lot about other things within marketing and personal branding and ABM. And he actually shared a screenshot of somebody who had requested a demo with their sales team and said, hey, look, I wanted you to know that the reason I'm requesting a demo and even looked into your company was because I saw Nick's content, really love what he's putting out there. He also shared something related to, this software company that intrigued me. And I said, look, I trust him. He's been really educational. He's the reason why I'm here today and interested in closing a deal. And that's amazing because the post that he was referring to didn't really tie into the product. It was more about over time, all this content and cool stuff he saw made him aware of their brand and then made him aware of that this software might be something interesting for us to use. So that's the frame of mind I think you need to kind of think about too as you're sharing and creating LinkedIn content, is that it doesn't need to always be blog posts and it doesn't always need to be about the company, product, or service. It should be a mix of everything that's important to you or individuals, and allowing those different types to happen because there's huge impact on the brand that you're not seeing. Cool. So hopefully that was super helpful. The other question you should investigate too, especially if you are not an admin of a program, is do you have an employee advocacy program at your company? Many organizations might have one in place and you might not even realize it, that maybe one department or if a different global section has it. It's just a simple way to organize a lot of this content and make it easier for your employees to find and get started. And it's a great place to start. And you can find out how you can get invited. Maybe you signed up and you just haven't used it much, but this is a good time to kind of get familiar with it and use it for LinkedIn sharing. And we have tons of guides, tons of insights. So if this is all new and scary to you, don't worry. We break it down in so many great articles. You'll become a pro in no time. And we also recently launched our Employee Advocacy Masterclass. It's all free video content, just covering all sorts of just information around employee advocacy, social selling, personal branding, and how it all ties together. So definitely check those out. I think you'll learn a lot too if this is something that's really intriguing to you. All right, let's get into some of the posting tips. So there's definitely more than what I'm going to get into, but I wanted to keep it pretty high level and straight to the point, just so this episode didn't drag out to be 40 or 50 minutes. We like to try to keep these as fast moving, but as educational as possible. So there's 6 different posting tips we're going to go through. And I'm kind of doing a little bait and switch here because the first tip actually isn't a posting tip. It's engage with the LinkedIn community. So that might be a surprise that our first tip is not about posting and scheduling, which I think is kind of funny, but it's important. So the LinkedIn algorithm is kind of a mystery, right? And we won't ever really understand exactly how it works or functions, but we do have some insights to how things are flowing or what kind of triggers certain things. Social platforms want you to stay in the platform, period, right? It's a community-based place. And most people, when they're in this space, the content that's in their feed is a disruption to other things. So you want the content, they want to stay in there. So it's a reason why you want to start engaging and being part of the community. Often people who want to start posting and sharing content, that's all they do. What you have to remember is engaging with the community. So the easiest thing to do is spend 5 or 10 minutes each morning before you have that sip of coffee or when you just made that coffee or before you're really diving into some deep think and work. Spend the morning, a couple minutes just liking some content, commenting and providing some value of some things that interest you. Be a part of the conversation. So this helps you for a few reasons, right? One, people start to recognize your name and insights. So when you start to post content, they start to trust it or be like, oh, well, that might be interesting because he's always engaging with me. People look at your profile or want to connect and follow you when you're providing valuable content or just engaging with them. They may follow you back or want to connect. It does warm up the LinkedIn algorithm. So when you engage with other people's posts, so we know that when you start being a community, it does something in the back end that you're being a part of it and that the feed is trusting you more. We don't really know a lot of insights there, but there's been enough people doing this and data to see that there's some correlation there. Now, you don't want to necessarily game the LinkedIn algorithm because you're never going to be able to, because, recently you probably saw polls constantly, right? So a lot of people are creating that to game the system, but at some point that's going to trail off and the next thing moves on. And prior to that, it was all video content. And video content is still important, but people who were prioritizing that were getting all this engagement. So everybody was doing videos, but then the videos got weaker or weren't as great. And then they tweaked the algorithm and now it's just even. Audiences will also start to engage more with your content. So what we call it is like returning the favor. I start engaging with similar people over and over and they see my name. They want to engage back because they're just thankful that I've been part of their conversation or, thought their content was interesting, whatever it may be. And then trusted relationships begin to form. Professional opportunities can arise from being a part of these conversations. I try to spend a couple minutes, not every morning during the week, but I usually get 3 or 4 days of the week in where I'm just liking or commenting some things on just interesting content. I'm not doing it for the sake of doing it. I'm actually doing on things that are interesting. And that has helped my network grow. And people have followed me just from those conversations. And you've probably even potentially seen some great thought leaders out there who have done the same thing and are building their following through that. So LinkedIn posting tip number 2, mix up your topic posting schedule. So I think you need to identify the topics you plan on talking about and what interests you before blindly jumping in, which is why we recommend figuring this out before these LinkedIn posting tips. But now that you have your core topics, right, what should your posting schedule look like? Well, it kind of depends. And I know it's not a direct answer that you might have been looking for on this, but there's no set content schedule for when a certain topic should be posted. But the thing is, you should mix it up for variety. So I tend to post on LinkedIn 2 or 3 times per week. Others might post every day. It's really what you feel comfortable doing and how your audience begins to react with your content. You'll get a good feel for what works or what doesn't over time. But posts talking about your company, the work you do, and products or services are certainly great to include in your content mix. And it's certainly going to be an important part of your employee advocacy program, or if you're launching one, that kind of thing. But too much of that can also be less engaging and interesting to your audiences, right? It's why we encourage our customers to allow employees to share various forms of content. Even non-company related content can positively impact the business while still giving employees more content freedom. And that's why I was kind of mentioning earlier too, that there's still an impact, even if it's not always about the company, even if it's not always a blog post. You have to think about things like this. And even the dark social, where people are engaging with content or consuming it, but not taking an action where either our program is going to record it or an attribution software is going to record it. You'll still have important data, of course, but there's things that are happening that aren't necessarily attributed correctly. It's just the way it is because of the nature of platforms and social media outlets that are being engaged with these days. Naturally, with that, another tip is to use different content types. So, of course, you want to drive traffic to your website, your blog, or company, but link share is not the only content medium you should be posting. You want to find a balance of text only, images, GIFs, or GIFs, however you like to pronounce it. I like to say GIFs, and videos to post. All of these will keep your content fresh, engaging, and you get to be more creative. So it should be no surprise to you that the algorithms in LinkedIn tend to push down links, whether that's natively uploading or for a third-party resource. It naturally happens because they don't want people bouncing off their product. But we found that if you're mixing up these content types and doing different things, your content links will still get traction. You'll still get clicks because people will still be engaging with you because they're used to you posting things beyond just links. And the other thing too is you can take stuff from these company links and blog posts and turn that into a text-based post or a GIF or a video. And it still gets the message across. You just aren't getting that direct traffic to your website from that specific post. But it doesn't mean they aren't coming to your website. It doesn't mean they're not trusting your brand. And it doesn't mean they won't become a customer. And I think that's the hurdle, whether that's for executives, company leaders, managers, or just people who are just newer to this, have a hard time getting past, is that we want everything to be attributable. And of course, naturally, we should have reporting stuff, but you have to think of the outside picture of what this is happening to. So we really encourage different content types for that reason. And I mean, a great example too is our own CEO, Cameron, took one of our blog posts we had, just made a video about it, made it different, right? Like he included a link, but the context was the video and just saying like, hey, we put this great post together. It's really about recruiting employer brand, why it's so important, how employees can be a part of this conversation. Here's why you need to check it out. And he just scrolled through a little bit and that was that. And that was more, we had like 1,000 video views on that. And then great engagement on the link click this time. So you can mix these things up. Do different things that are interesting and find different ways. By mixing up these content types and engaging your networks, your link content just has a better chance of being consumed and clicked and engaged too. And you might say, why? It's because, well, you've warmed up these algorithms with various mediums over time. Your networks are trusting your insights. They know you're not just spamming everybody with links. And it's okay then. So share links when it's the right appropriate time. It doesn't have to be just link only content, and it shouldn't just be not like you shouldn't avoid links either. You should have a good mix. Experiment to determine your best time to post is another tip for us. So if you've ever searched for the best times to post in social media, you'll get tons of different results in the search engine results. And most have similar times or days to post. But I think, the thing that's important is, look, LinkedIn is a sophisticated algorithm for its timeline. Gaming the system might work for a bit, but it's the good content that's educational, creative, intriguing, engaging, that's always going to prevail. And, I think you will find what works for you. And that's, not to say that timing isn't everything. Like I personally like to post during weekday mornings between 8:30 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Eastern. It just seems to work with the audience I've built and connect. Now, it doesn't mean I can't try different times. Of course, I don't do like 3 o'clock in the morning, but I have done Sundays and that seems to work sometimes. I've noticed personally Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays seem to work really well for me. But again, it varies from person to person. So I think it's okay to look at the average kind of times and results that are out there. But I think you can make your own kind of set schedule. Like when do you want to be active, right? Like when have you felt that your audience, and you can experiment a bit and that can help you. Again, you can just post randomly as you want, or you can find your groove. But I like to find a groove and kind of stay consistent because that way, I think not only that LinkedIn knows that that's kind of consistently my time of posting, but the audiences I'm engaging with are used to seeing me in the feed at that time, which is great. Part 5 is kind of not another just posting tip. It's actually another part of being in the platform is respond to every comment on your post. Occasionally you'll get some kind of dumb spam message and you can either delete it or ignore it. But 8% of the time, you're going to get good comments on there. And comments are great. And the good thing with comments is that's signaling to LinkedIn that this is a good discussion happening or that there's some value in the piece of content that other people need to see. More inclined that content will go to the top of feeds or be refreshed in people's feeds so that you're getting more eyes on your content. one of the easiest things to do is just respond back to comments, either if it's like a thank you, or even just like their comment, but engage with it or be responsive to it. Again, this content is generating a discussion, so it's signaling to Google that's interesting. You start to build trust with your commenters that you do engage back, and people like to be engaged back with, right? So it starts these conversations and keeps them intrigued for future content. Others start to jump in and engage or discover you or want to be part of the conversation that maybe they would have been quiet before, but now because there's a conversation happening, like, you know what, I'm going to get involved. So the snowball effect on interesting content really works. Just take a look at one of my LinkedIn posts. I actually have this in a blog post, but I'll describe it to you. So same kind of thing I talked about. I did kind of like a funny like GIF with Ron Burgundy and basically saying like, hey, do you ever get a connection request and just by their message or their profile headline, you kind of already assume that you're going to be spammed pretty quickly. So it's kind of like a just funny, cheeky kind of thing. And I mean, it got like a good amount of likes, but it got a couple of comments. But I immediately responded to those comments, and then it started triggering a conversation. And then it ended up with over 50 comments and over 50 likes and engagements on it. And then that spiraled to over 6,000 views. I mean, it's not, groundbreaking views. It's not like I'm getting millions of views, but that's 6,000 views, right? Which is really cool. And then I started engaging in conversation about this. And again, people see where I work. They were checking my profile out. They were probably even looking at what EveryoneSocial does or is or what it's about. But those are the kind of things that sparked because I was responding to comments. If I wasn't responding to comments, I don't know that a conversation would have kept going or that more people would have commented or would have been in the feed for longer. It was about a week where I was still getting reactions to it, which is really cool. And then lastly, number 6 is write like you talk. So I'm going to cover a couple of things on this. Often when people post on social, it sounds too formal or corporate. And understandably so, if you're running an employee advocacy program, you may lock down some commentary because it helps people who don't know necessarily how to write super well for social. They're more comfortable. But we always encourage any employee to just be allowed to put their own thoughts. Like you can put disclosures or hashtags or anything like that in an advocacy program to ensure it's compliant if there's any issues, because we know certain industries have to have those things, and that's totally fine and makes a lot of sense. But allowing them some personality, like their networks can really tell when it's a marketing person that wrote it, right? It reads like corporate or it reads like a marketing kind of jargony type of thing. Put some baseline copy, but allow the editing feature and give variations of it, right? This allows the conversation in the text to be a little better. But we also say just to be more human and make it conversational and personable, like telling a story. Like you don't have to be the best at grammar. You don't have to be the best copywriter. It's just being your authentic self. So we really encourage that. And I think it's super important in any kind of social media posting you're doing. And you can keep it short. It doesn't have to be super long. Nothing has to be super in depth either. It's just talk like you speak. And there's also this other trend too out there about breaking up copy and content and posts. And, here's our thoughts on this and philosophy on it. So 100%, you shouldn't have massive, bulky paragraphs on LinkedIn. It's just hard to read. It's not as easy to digest. People want to look past it because they don't want to see a wall of text. But on the other end, you also don't want to just break up sentences to be like 2 or 3 words and make LinkedIn posts incredibly long just because you're trying to, I don't know, make it easier for people to read, but also gaming LinkedIn, because people know when you click to see more on LinkedIn posts, that triggers some kind of algorithm response. So people think they need to break up all the content like that. It's more or less in between. So you can do a sentence or two and then break that up into another paragraph or a couple words to get certain points across. But we're seeing a trend, and it's been ongoing back and forth, where people are doing 4 or 5 words or less, and then going on to the next line, going on to the next line, going to the next line with either no paragraph breaking, no periods. It's just kind of like the sentence continues onto a different line. I'm going to tell you, and maybe it's just my personal thoughts, but I've polled a lot of different people about this, is that it's actually harder to read that and it's more aggravating to read. And I refuse to read content that does that sometimes because it's just so draining that I have to keep rolling my eyes down to the next line. So your job shouldn't be to make it harder for anyone to consume your content. So it's a careful balance. You don't want massive paragraphs. You also don't want these little 1-word line things forever. And I've seen people even write blog posts like that. And let me tell you, I have immediately bounced off any blog post that does that because it is frustrating and annoying to keep scrolling and reading. So I don't know where this trend came from on the blog post side of things. So please stop doing that. But all joking aside, but I am serious about it. But yeah, write like you talk, break up your paragraphs, but you got to find that careful balance. And you can test things too. If you feel like these bigger paragraphs work, then so be it. But I think we have seen it with all of our customers who are doing this and spreading out the sentences a little bit better, but not too much. It just reads much better and just looks more professional. So really figure out how you want to talk about things, figure out your structuring, but keep that in mind as you're going forward with your LinkedIn posting. So yeah, I mean, those are some of our tips when it comes to LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn is only one channel. Of course, we feel, Twitter and Facebook is still important. Instagram is becoming more interesting. Obviously, we'll pay attention as other channels really become important, but really wanted to help you dive into LinkedIn. I think, the last year we've seen a surge of more people understanding the value of not only either just building a personal brand or just being involved in social media at work or using LinkedIn to be that kind of assist into their career or professional opportunity. So hopefully these tips are helpful. We do have a blog post about this too that you are welcome to go check out. It covers a little bit more in depth. You'll see some of the screenshots of things I was referencing. It's everyonesocial.com/blog/LinkedIn-posting-tips. Or you can just search for it, LinkedIn posting tips. You'll for sure come across the article as well. But hopefully this is helpful. We'll be continuing to update this of more tips we've discovered over the years. So, come back to this post anytime. If you have more questions, make sure, to reach out to myself or anybody else on our team. We're always open to try to help others. If you're a customer of EveryoneSocial, of course, you can hit up your customer support team at any point. We're always happy to share more or dive deeper into the topic. But thanks, everybody. Hope everyone has a great holiday and new year, and we'll see you next year in Engagement Drivers.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more engagement insights. Want to know how EveryoneSocial can provide you with the tools needed to keep everyone at your company connected, informed, creating, and sharing? Visit EveryoneSocial.com to learn more.